We are kicking off with WWE. The long-standing rivalry between Damian Priest, Rhea Ripley, and the revamped Judgment Day has been full of surprises, including Raquel Rodriguez recently being brought into the group. While Raquel is now an ally of Liv Morgan and Dominic Mysterio, who seem to be the group's leaders as of late, but it appears that WWE is currently discussing a member of the faction leaving eventually. Carlito used to be a part of the NWO until turning heel and attacking Dragon Lee, and while he's now in the Judgment Day, it's been reported that WWE has been discussing his removal. On the latest WrestleVotes radio on Sportskeeda's Backstage Pass Patreon, Joey Votes shared that there's been talks of turning Carlito back into a singles star, possibly with a push. It's added that the addition of Rodriguez to the Judgment Day has made the group feel overcrowded, and Carlito could be ousted from the rule-breaking group if he steps out of line. This could lead to Carlito giving the group a reason to excommunicate him if he steps out of line even a little bit or makes a mistake, setting him up for a solo run, which they believe he deserves. WrestleVotes predicted that the tease of Carlito's exit will come in the next couple of weeks, and said on a personal note that they believe Carlito deserves a singles run. Later on, Joey mentioned that there is no set timeline for this, but it's entirely possible fans could see Carlito in a singles run by the end of 2024, as WWE has already discussed these plans. We will have to wait and see whether Carlito will end up leaving the Judgment Day in order to pursue a singles run, as fans certainly feel he more than deserves a proper run this time around. Do you believe Carlito leaving the Judgment Day will be the best thing for his career? Let us know in the comments section below. On the September 30th Raw, Seth Rollins made his return to TV to cost Bronson Reed in his last Monster Standing match against Braun Strowman. Rollins had been out of action since August 5th when Reed hit him with 6 tsunamis, and while the Visionary hasn't wrestled since his return, that's about to change. Ever since his comeback, Rollins has been angling for a match with Reed and made his case to Adam Pearce on this week's Raw, and Reed, likewise, wants the match to happen. In the meantime, Rollins shared on Instagram that he will make his in-ring return on October 25th at the SmackDown taping at the Barclays Center, where he will face Dominic Mysterio. The match is expected to be a dark match following the show, and in his post, Rollins shared his excitement to get back in the ring, stating, "First match back, let's ride." We'll have to see how Rollins fares in his upcoming match against Mysterio, as fans are undoubtedly excited for Seth to wrestle in his first match since July. Over to TNA Wrestling now, as the company's talent exchange program with NXT is still going on, which resulted in one of NXT's up-and-comers making their TNA debut this week. During the October 17th show, Ariana Grace, serving as the official NXT TNA liaison, introduced NXT's Brinley Reese as the opponent for TNA knockout Ash by Elegance. Reese made her debut in the Impact Zone, but things didn't go as planned for her, and a distraction by Ash's manager George Iceman allowed for Elegance to get the win. After the match, Elegance made her mark by smearing lipstick all over Reese's face as a teaser for her upcoming VIP makeover launch party. Grace's involvement in the TNA NXT collaboration has become a key part of the storyline, and who would you like to see cross the line next between the two companies? Let us know below. Not too long ago, it was reported by WrestleVotes that SmackDown would be becoming a 3-hour show, now that Raw is a 2-hour show and is set to leave the USA Network at the end of this year. This idea has been met with a mixed response, as fans have often criticized Raw's 3 hours as too long, though an extra hour would allow for more talent to shine on the blue brand. During the latest WrestleVotes radio, Joey Votes and TC reported that the change is coming, but that SmackDown will only be a 3-hour show from January 3rd to mid-May 2025. It is unclear why the 3-hour show will only be for a couple of months, but it is going to be interesting to see how things play out, especially on the road to WrestleMania 41. But what do you think of this? Will a 3-hour SmackDown be too long, or are you excited by the prospect of an extra hour on Friday nights? Let us know what you think down below. In January of this year, Janel Grant filed her lawsuit against WWE, John Laurinaitis, and Vince McMahon, which was covered in detail during Netflix's recent Mr. McMahon docuseries. Recently, Kendra Barkoff, Grant's spokesperson, spoke to WrestleNomics about how Grant is coping with the ongoing legal case and said it's been very difficult for her. Grant is still dealing with the trauma of what happened to her, Barkoff adds, and praised Grant's strength and commitment to justice, as she wants McMahon and WWE to be held responsible. Barkoff expressed great respect for Grant's bravery in facing these challenges and noted how hard it is for her to confront these painful memories every day of her lawsuit. She emphasized that the experiences described in the lawsuit are truly horrific, which only goes to show the courage of Grant in pursuing this case. This legal action in Connecticut's Superior Court in Stamford follows the federal lawsuit, which is on hold pending a federal investigation into McMahon. The 79-year-old has been trying to fix his tarnished reputation, though he's hardly been helped by the Netflix docuseries that looked into his many controversies. Regardless, we'll have to wait and see how the trafficking lawsuit will progress once the federal investigation continues. On Saturday, November 30th, WWE will host its Survivor Series PLE from Vancouver, Canada, but it appears this week that there's been an adjustment to the show. On WWE's official events page, Survivor Series has been given a new start time of 2:30 p.m. local time, which is 5:30 p.m. Eastern, and it was previously listed as 3:30 p.m. local time. Typically, this listing is 30 minutes before the actual start of the show, so it would indicate a 6 p.m. Eastern start time for Survivor Series instead of 7 p.m. This change gives Survivor Series the same start time as Bad Blood earlier this month, as that show was shifted earlier due to a UFC event taking place on the same night. There isn't a UFC event planned for November 30th, but there is one planned for every week of November prior to this, as well as on 2 Saturdays in December. Hopefully we can find out why WWE has changed Survivor Series, and no matter when the show takes place, WWE intends to give a stacked card with Wargames matches next month. On February 1st, WWE will host its annual Royal Rumble PLE, but this show will take place the same day as UFC's 250th Fight Night in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. This has surprised fans as both WWE and UFC are under TKO, and it appears that there is a belief that the two audiences don't overlap as much as one may expect. On WrestleVote's Radio Backstage Pass, hosts Joey Votes and TC addressed rumors that the Royal Rumble could start early to avoid a conflict with the UFC show. This was the case with WWE Bad Blood earlier this month, and the pair confirmed that the Royal Rumble will begin at its scheduled time of 7 p.m. Eastern. The Rumble is always one of the most exciting shows of the year, with TNA's Joe Hendry even teasing getting involved, and expect a huge show to kick off the road to WrestleMania 40. Earlier this year, Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits feuded with the Final Testament, culminating in a WrestleMania street fight that Lashley, Ford, and Dawkins would win. This match saw plenty of violence and weapons used, but Cross wanted to use some genuine violence, or close enough, during his angle with the Almighty. On the Insight podcast, Cross recalled Lashley suggesting that they have a fight backstage and convinced the dirt sheets it was real to add something extra to their rivalry. He said, "There was this one time, Bob was like, you know what we should do? All these guys, they like to talk and they like to run into the dirt sheets and stuff. Dude, we should fight at the beginning of the show. We should get in a fight because all these guys are going to go and call the dirt sheets and tell them that we actually had a fight, and it's going to stir people up into what we're doing on TV." And I was like, "Bob, hold on a sec. First of all, what happens if nobody breaks up the fight?" And he was like, "Yeah, I didn't think about that." And I go, "Yeah, and also, what happens if we get fired? Because what are we going to do? Hunter's going to pull us aside and be like, what's wrong with you guys? Oh, it's just a work. You guys are bleeding. What are you doing?" Just the whole logical process of having to explain that it was a work and hoping that the office would have been okay with it that we did that. I was like, let's hold off on this idea. I love crazy stuff like this, but please, let's hold off on this idea. Ultimately, this idea did not play out, perhaps because WWE did not want the idea of backstage fights happening between talent getting out there, even if it was a work. After all, the backstage fights of CM Punk and AEW would forever change his relationship with the company and did not paint the company's management in a good light at all. But what do you think? Would this fight between Cross and Lashley help their feud, or would it have been too much trouble to be worth it? Share your thoughts in the comments. It was in December of last year that Charlotte Flair suffered an injury during her match with Asuka, which has kept the Queen out of action ever since. This injury forced Flair to miss WrestleMania, a show she is usually a featured performer at, and with next year's events drawing closer, we have an update on Charlotte's condition. WrestleVotes reports that Flair is expected to be back by WrestleMania 41 in April 2025, and is likely going to be in the top match that the women have at the Showcase of the Immortals. This will come as good news to many, as there's no shortage of fans who believe that the handling of the women's division without Flair has been a weak point of Triple H's regime. As for how Flair will return and who she'll work with, that remains to be seen, but expect the Queen to be back and back in a top spot in the not-too-distant future. In recent weeks, Jon Moxley has been raising hell in AEW alongside his faction, which includes Claudio Castagnoli, Wheeler Yuta, Pac, and Marina Shafir. The group have already rid AEW of Bryan Danielson, with no word on when he'll be back, and on this week's Dynamite, Moxley waged war on the AEW roster if they don't do what he says. This angle has already received high praise from fans, and according to Ibu of Wrestle Purists, RJ City has been writing and producing the storyline for Moxley and his allies. RJ City is also serving as the head writer for Mariah May's current storyline and has been heavily involved throughout her run with the company, which has also received praise. RJ City has proven to be an entertaining host of Hey EW, but is also working hard behind the scenes. And what have you made to the angle with Jon Moxley? Let us know down below. At WrestleDream, Konosuke Takeshita defeated Ricochet and Will Ospreay to win the international title, and after the bout, an interesting graphic was shared online. This graphic showed a match card between Takeshita and Mascara Dorada, and while this was a fan-made image, it's caught the attention of those working in AEW. On Wrestling Observer Radio, it was shared that the consensus within AEW is that while it was a fake graphic, it would be a great match, and now AEW wants to make it happen. Mascara Dorado may be better known by his WWE name of Grand Metalik, and most recently competed for AEW as part of the June 19th, 2024 Rampage, where he lost in tag team action. Interestingly, Dorado has competed 7 times for AEW, and while he's won every time he's worked under the Mascara Dorada name, he's lost every time wrestling as Metalik. As for when this match may take place, that remains to be seen, but the fan who created this graphic may have very much influenced AEW's plans for the International Champion. As we know, Raw will move to Netflix in January 2025, but for fans outside the US, they will also receive SmackDown, NXT, and premium live events. As seen by images making rounds online, Netflix is already gearing up for NXT's move, as on the UK version of Netflix, the Silver brand is listed among those projects coming soon. The graphic features Trick Williams, Ethan Page, Lola Vice, and Roxanne Perez, and also features the new Silver NXT logo and a launch date of January 8th. This Netflix deal is huge for WWE, expected to be valued at $5 billion for 10 years, as a new era is looming for WWE programming on the streaming juggernaut. Next month, voters in the United States will head to the polls to choose their next leader, and before then, Republican leader Donald Trump will be interviewed by an unlikely name. As first reported by Politico, Trump is expected to do an interview this week on 6 Feet Under, the podcast of fellow WWE Hall of Famer The Undertaker. Trump is no stranger to wrestling and even bought Raw for a brief period in 2009, and his interview with the Phenom will make for an interesting listen ahead of next month's election. Outside of the ring, CM Punk has made a handful of TV and film appearances, and now the Raw superstar is set to appear in upcoming indie horror film Night Patrol. Punk will play the violent right-hand man if a police sergeant as an LAPD officer uncovers hidden secrets he shouldn't have, and expect this film to be released in 2025. At WWE's recent event in Manchester, interim UFC heavyweight champion Tom Aspinall shared the ring with WWE champion Cody Rhodes and world heavyweight champion Gunther. Aspinall got a huge ovation in front of his hometown crowd, and when speaking to the Sun tabloid, shared that fans could be seeing much more of him in a WWE ring. He teased, "When I've retired from MMA, I'm switching over to WWE, and I'm going to be the WWE heavyweight champ." With TKO now in play, WWE and UFC have seen plenty of crossover, and in May of this year, Derek Lewis suggested that he was in talks with WWE. Paddy Pimblett has said that he wants to make an appearance in WWE in the future, and there's been rumors for years that Conor McGregor could one day make the move. But what do you think of Tom Aspinall joining WWE? Do you want to see more UFC names try their hand in the world of pro wrestling? Share your thoughts down in the comments. It was in September 2023 that Jade Cargill signed with WWE after a highly successful run with AEW, during which she became the first and longest reigning TBS champion. When asked in interviews about AEW, Jade said she is grateful for her time there but wants to focus on her now and future in WWE. But was she more comfortable before her huge move? On a recent edition of the Busted Open Radio podcast, Tommy Dreamer shared his belief that Cargill had a more comfortable time in AEW compared to her role with WWE. He explained, "I thought about this the other night. Here's my take on Jade. I think Jade was mentally more comfortable in AEW. There's, I think, a lot more pressure on her in WWE. The pressure of she came over with, high expectations. Yes, she's doing well, she's got everything you need to have to become a megastar there, but when she moves, yes, I see her thinking." Cargill has said that she felt like she was thrown on TV with no direction in AEW, while in WWE she has been presented from the start as one of the top women on the company's roster. Ultimately, Jade plans on being a WWE superstar for a long time to come, and do you agree with Dreamer's assertions? Let us know what you think in the comments. Since 2012, TNA has inducted names into its Hall of Fame, and this month, Rhino and TNA co-founder Bob Ryder will receive the honor as part of the countdown to Bound for Glory. Rhino joined TNA in 2005 and would become the NWA World Heavyweight Champion that same year, and is also a two-time TNA World Tag Team Champion. Ryder was TNA's very first employee after co-founding the company with Jeff and Jerry Jarrett in 2002, and would remain in various roles until his passing in 2020. The pair will be inducted, with Eric Young accepting for Ryder on October 26th from Wayne State University Fieldhouse in Detroit, and we'd like to extend our congratulations to the TNA inductees. This year has seen WWE, NXT, and TNA Wrestling work together in a huge deal for both sides, but back in 2021, TNA, then Impact Wrestling, forged a partnership with AEW. That partnership saw the belt collector Kenny Omega win both the TNA and Impact World titles before losing the gold to Christian Cage, another AEW star, on the debut of Rampage. The relationship between the two companies came to an end shortly after, and we may now have more of an idea of why that came to be. When Sean Ross Sapp spoke to Scott D'Amore, the former TNA president said that Impact was struggling to gain traction and hoped that AEW's involvement would help out. That plan worked, as Omega's presence raised pay-per-view buys, TV viewership, social media engagement, and economically, but at the time, Omega was in a lot of pain. This made things difficult for him, but the cleaners still made an impact, and Scott noted that the two TNA pay-per-views with Omega were the highest grossing in TNA history. Some have critiqued this partnership, saying it was too one-sided in AEW's favor, but Scott said he believes Omega got a bad rap from day one. As for why the partnership ended, Scott noted that Kenny had wanted to work matches with both Eddie Edwards and Josh Alexander, but restraints stopped those matches taking place. These restraints preventing the matches was said to be one of the reasons why the relationship between companies ended, and both companies have since gone their separate ways. Since then, Impact is rebranded as TNA and has seen a revival, but Scott D'Amore won't forget the efforts Kenny Omega went to help out the promotion. As we reported yesterday, Jey Uso hit a people's elbow during a WWE live event in Newcastle en route to retaining his Intercontinental Championship against Braun Breaker. This elbow was of course made famous by The Rock, who is part of the Bloodline, and was this spot at the live event a tease of huge plans for main event Jey? On the latest SmackDown, Jimmy Uso tried to convince Roman Reigns to recruit Jey for their war with the new Bloodline, which is expected to lead to a Wargames match at Survivor Series. Reigns made clear that his stance is no yeet, and on Raw, Jey was similarly unwilling to reunite with his brother despite Jimmy's efforts. With Jey refusing to align with Reigns and Jimmy, it could be just a matter of time before he aligns with the new Bloodline in what would make for a shocking heel turn. Perhaps the use of the people's elbow was Jey teasing his loyalty to the final boss, who unlike Jimmy and Reigns, has done very little against the reigning Intercontinental Champion. Fans shouldn't forget that Reigns attacked Jey multiple times over the summer of 2023, and it was his brother Jimmy who cost him the undisputed WWE title at that year's SummerSlam. Despite what's being presented on TV, Jey is expected to be a part of the Bloodline Wargames match, but as for whose side he'll take, that remains to be seen. Back in 2020, WWE NXT introduced the Fight Pit, and since then, 3 Fight Pit matches have taken place, all of which featured male superstars. Speaking on the Wayne Ayers podcast, NXT star Lola Vice shared that she wants to change that, as one of her bucket list goals is to be in the first ever women's Fight Pit match. When asked for potential opponents, Vice named current rival Jada Parker, and also has her eyes on NXT's 2 newest female arrivals, Stephanie Vaquer and Julia. Vice would feel right at home in the Fight Pit, as the 26-year-old competed in Bellator MMA before WWE and boasts an impressive 4-1 win-loss record with 2 wins via knockout. With WWE's steps and equal treatment of women and men over the past decades, a Fight Pit match is a real possibility, and if it happens, Lola Vice will be at the front of the line to step in the cage. And we're ending today with TNA, as at Victory Road, Steph DeLander shared that she was dealing with a neck injury and that she would need surgery to fuse her C5-C6 vertebrae. This week, DeLander took to social media with positive news, saying she's now got a brand new neck, and joked about getting a BBL while she was at it. DeLander has said in the past that she expects to be out of action for at least 6 months, and the NXT alum has proven to be a hit on the indies alongside indie god Matt Cardona. DeLander may have been making waves in wrestling, but she's now focusing on her health and healing up, and we'd like to wish her a full and speedy recovery after surgery.